Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal seems like a standard Memento Mori, where we're just being told, remember this too shall pass, you too shall die. But its surprise ending actually gets to what's really interesting about the Memento Mori itself. How we don't just take this comfort in being told that we are going to die. Our psychic experience of life has a finite end to it somewhere. But we are getting to the ways in which we supersede that. The reason, the traumatic thing that the Memento Mori in the standard sense shelters us from. How we actually persist past our own life, our own limitations, and access this infinitude of being unable to die. So when we dance away with death at the end of Seventh Seal, that's real Memento Mori. That's what's interesting there. The film's really just an idea. Knight comes back from the Crusades and plays chess with death to put off his own dying. But what else do you throw into that to make a film? And it's really just vitalism. It's this learning to love life and gather friends. And even though you're in the midst of the bubonic plague and death is all around and coming for everyone, how do you live and enjoy life in the midst of that? And we get there. It's an enjoyable film. There's comedy to it. And if you love, Game of Thrones or The Witcher, like any grimdark fantasy, Seventh Seal is a necessary watch. But the logical conclusion of that vitalism that we're enjoying through Seventh Seal is death. That's what the film shows, that when you cling to life and you make all of these friends, you're all going to die one day. The logical conclusion of loving life is having to die. So the knight doesn't just die himself. He brings his friends together into his home. He reunites with his wife. He's been gone for 10 years. And that's when death shows up for everyone. Everyone dies. Thanks, knight. But very pointedly too, the one group that does escape is the young couple with their child. So we're being gestured there, like the child's in danger being part of this group. We know death is coming as the film continues. But the husband gets a vision of what's going to happen, and they escape just in the nick of time. So, that's a really skillful treatment of how you handle the death of children, how you show that it's necessary in this bubonic plague, that death does come for us all, but you don't, make us watch children die, because no one wants to see that. We just want to be told that our own government is killing children in the Middle East, right? That's what people really want out of their fucking lives. Sorry. That I had this, yeah. Now, Freudian Death Drive is clinging to something else over life itself and just being rigidly stuck to it. So it's more of a drilling down than an elevating up of things. But, you can work in different ways, like love or self-sacrifice, heroism. These can be ways of accessing, the infinitude of Death Drive, but really, Death Drive is also this rigid being stuck and just being more like the Terminator or being a zombie that's moving forward acephalically. So you don't get either versions of that in Seventh Seal. The knight is just trying to forestall death. He tries to cheat the game at the end, but at the end you just have to face that death is coming for you and say a few words. And there's meditation on the void of God, as we get to this point, in a Kierkegaardian sense, in a structural sense. But, that's just kind of nice. That's really there to show that there's no way out from death. Like the knight is saying, well, what about God? I got to get to God somehow. And he's reaching everywhere he can. But, God is a structural void. And we just experience the undergoing of death. But once we're there, what we get isn't a scene where people are lying down as gross bubonic plague corpses. We see everyone on this hillside holding hands and frolicking with death. So a group of 7 people running off like this. And that is a depiction of what actual Death Drive is, how we move on and we're like skeletons dancing after dying, how death doesn't actually end things, how we're still moving on. So that's our experience of Freudian Death Drive. That's what's unsettling about, Lacanian lamella, zombies, Alien, Terminator, all of these things of like partial objects just moving on despite having no reason to be moving on. So that's a really a real break from what the whole experience of the movie is. How we enjoy medieval life, we cling to the acting, the infidelity drama with the blacksmith, the squire who beats up a guy who is a bad guy. Like, these are all like real vitalist things that make us like enjoy life. But we aren't made to cling to that. That's like the vehicle to getting to this point where we are a bit unsettled by watching these people dance at a distance and not be able to properly die. And it's the same thing with the philosophical musings about God and God as a void. Like, that wall, that void is just part of the structure that upholds this infinitude that we actually are experiencing. So, I wanted to think about, like, how do you make this film more radical? Like, does the knight realize he's leading his friends into their doom and sacrifices himself somehow, or find some way to maybe keep the loop of death in this game going into infinitude itself? Like, these are the things that you would normally think of subverting, dealing with a game with death, and how do you forestall that? But I think it's more pleasurable to realize that we do get the death, and that itself leads to this weird dancing. And that's the thing that's haunting about the film, that has been, up to that point, just an enjoyable medieval drama. So that's Seventh Seal. It really takes the Memento Mori, gives us the reasons why we enjoy Memento Mori, and breaks them at the end. It's an unsettling image watching everyone dance like that. It's way more unsettling than seeing everyone lying down flat at the end. I loved watching Bergman in college, but it's been a while. So follow for a few more critiques on Bergman.